Namaste. So, as part of the 150th year of Sri Aurobindo's birth, we start another series on writings of Sri Aurobindo. I personally feel a lot of celebrations are going on, movies are being made, and many things are happening. The ideal way to celebrate Sri Aurobindo's year is just try to be a living example of his teachings. Now, that's obviously a very tall order. It's not easy, even to be, 1%, a smallest fraction of that. Some people who just observe the life of Sri Aurobindo on the surface believe that if they withdraw into silence, silence is not synonymous with solitude or seclusion. Silence is an inner state. But some people believe that if they withdraw into seclusion, into solitude, they are becoming an example. But that's not the example at all that Sri Aurobindo would want us to. When someone asks Sri Aurobindo that I am thinking of, segregating and withdrawing myself into seclusion, what do you have to say? Sri Aurobindo says it's most likely going to lead you to dropping off your mind whatever little is left. So, because silence is very powerful to start with. And there are two kinds of seclusion. One is the seclusion of the weak, because the world contact is too much to bear. Most people do not enter into contact with the world because they are too weak to bear the impact of the world. They cannot wrestle with the immense world forces. But there is another kind who, having wrestled and conquered, conquest is not just outer, but inwardly conquered all the fear, all the dangers, all the difficulties and challenges. Whether they win or lose is not the issue. And then they withdraw into a mightier state. So that silence is a mighty state of the soul. It's pregnant with the birth of infinity. In Sri Aurobindo's yoga, it is required only from time to time, if at all. But otherwise, the yoga has to be done in contact with the world. So we see that state of Sri Aurobindo, that he withdrew to enter into a larger and more powerful kind of action than the world had ever known. So, but this is one way, that best way to pay our homage is to follow the line of yoga that Sri Aurobindo has revealed for us. But before we can follow the yoga, there is something else which is required, or at least is required at the same time. And that's what Sri Aurobindo says, that among the 4 aids that are given on the path of yoga, one of them is Shastra. So there is the guide, the master who dwells within us. There is the Shastra, which is also within us. And then there is the disciple, his effort, the effort that he puts in, but more than the effort, the aspiration. That's why very often it is said, right kind of effort. It's not just effort. One may sit in meditation for 8 hours, but that doesn't mean effort. So there is the right kind of effort, and then there is Kal, the agency of time. So this Shastra is essentially the eternal Veda which is seated within the heart of man. And it opens normally through life experiences. So when we go through lives, we have these experiences through which a truth awakens inside. And it takes shape and form in some kind of language. And very often they are strands, some bit of lamp of wisdom, a little ray, a little light that we catch and gather as our real treasure, which goes from life to life. But it's difficult, again, not easy, because we are living so much on the surface that we cannot really come in contact even with this eternal Veda which is secret inside the heart of man. But there have been, fortunately for us, and the compassion and grace of those who have gone beyond us, who have entered into the inner heart, inmost heart, and opened this Veda and read its book. Or they have climbed above the silence and got the secret word, the word which is the origin of things. And out of immense compassion, they have brought it down to us and given it to earth and man. The least we can do is to read it. Whether we understand or not is the second step. But the fact that we read it is, one, we come in contact with the consciousness of the one who has written it. So that's the minimum. So when we read a verse from the Gita, the Upanishad, and of course Sri Aurobindo's writings, then we come in contact with the consciousness of Sri Aurobindo and the mother, which is the minimum. And this minimum is actually maximum, because by coming in contact with their consciousness, we actually begin to change. So it's the simplest and easiest and direct of ways And that's why Sri Aurobindo gave all these wonderful works. Of course, at one level, one can use the word Swanta Sukhaya, which is one of the most misunderstood terms. So, very often you will see people quoting, he wrote these works for his own joy. Yes, but that joy he is sharing with all. So, if he wanted to just dwell in that Ananda, there was no need to write. So, yes, out of his own joy, in the sense, it is not written to create an effect. It is not written with the idea that if I publish this book, those people, so many people will be helped. None of these motives, the egoistic motives which operate in normal human beings, is operating there. It is a coming emergence from the depths of the Ananda, of that light which he has seen. But why is he sharing it? So that all of us can at least take a dip into that Ananda, take a sip from that Ananda. Maybe if little fortunate, we can swimming in the Ananda, and if we are very, very fortunate, drown in that Ananda. So that's why he has given this work. It is also very amazing that, first time, as far as I know, that the work of an avatar has been written in this way. And then, yes, the last century has seen certain masters who have spoken, and their speech and their writings have been put across in book form. But the beauty of Sri Aurobindo's writing is that if we really closely take a look, there is not one aspect of life which has been left untouched. And it has been seen from every possible angle. And that's one reason why when we dip into Sri Aurobindo's writings, one of the first challenges that we find, at least in the, some of those works like the Arya, is that there are long sentences, and people often wonder, they find it very difficult. Actually, the writings are not difficult. So where is the difficulty? To use a little, in a humorous vein, when somebody told me, I have a headache. So I said, yes, because there is a head, there is headache. So if there is no head, there is no headache. Meaning thereby that this head. So when we approach Sri Aurobindo, we approach him with all kinds of conceptions. For instance, we are going to read a spiritual book. So we have this idea of spiritual book that he will start with Om Garudaya Nama, Om this. Actually, people used to tell me, says, Dr. Saab, you speak very well, but you must start by saying Hari Om. So I couldn't help but laugh. And it was very inappropriate laughter, I quite admit. But this is the kind of stuff on which we have lived. That, it's, or if it is God's writing, it must begin at least with a mantra, and that mantra has to be a, conventional, typical, that I am used to. Now, if a Chinese has to utter a mantra, he will not use the word Om. He is likely to use the word Thou. That's a mantra for him. For a Christian mystic, he may just use the word Lord. That's a mantra for him. Mantra is anything that connects us to the divine. So, all of Sri Aurobindo's writings are mantric. But it's not mantric in the sense the way we understand a mantra, that it must be all in Sanskrit. It's God's wish. He may use any language, and he will use the language as a tool. And he will use the language which is accessible to all most readily. So some people say, yes, but there are inherent limitations in English language compared to, let us say, Sanskrit and even French. Well, there are. But we should not forget, but anything in the hands of God can be uplifted to what heights. And I remember that example of Shri Krishna when Bhishma is, about to kill Arjuna. Arjuna is unarmed. At that time, of course, Arjuna has not used the divine weapons. Otherwise, Bhishma would not stand a chance. So, but suddenly Krishna stands between them. So he says, but you are unarmed. What will you fight with? He says, the whole Srishti is my manifestation. He picks up the wheel, and that wheel becomes a Sudarshan Chakra. So, meaning thereby, when Sri Aurobindo uses a language, it's not about the language, it's about the user. It's not that Krishna will play only a particular flute, then only it will work. He can use anything and make it his divine flute. So this is one part about the usage of English, why he has used English, and I think it is so beautiful that it is so readily available to us. Also, we shouldn't forget that the Sanskrit that was used in those days and the Sanskrit as it has evolved, Sri Aurobindo has written so extensively on Sanskrit. He was a master philologist. I mean, he has given a new key. And who gave him the new key for the Sanskrit? Sri Krishna himself. He gave him the new Nirukta, the grammar. But even to decipher Sanskrit, you have to go in. You see sometimes the discussion that goes on, just a Sanskrit word. You know what it means? You know what that means? Now the beauty of Sri Aurobindo, he picks up any word. He's like a master artist. So he picks up any word, the most common word. If you go to the dictionary meaning, you will get a very strange sense. But when he uses it, he changes the entire sense. And I give this example often. In nature's instruments, loiter's secret God. Look at the word loiter, read it in dictionary. The word is aimlessly wandering. So it looks like not a very good word. When you say, why are you loitering here? So it's like negative. But when Sri Aurobindo uses this, in nature's instruments, loiter's secret God. He's just moving around here, there, and suddenly he meets you. There is the joy of the unexpected at any turn, because he's there built in the fabric of life. So Sri Aurobindo's words carry such a tremendous, profound sense within sense. And very often when we use a dictionary, we lose their meaning. Another aspect is, as I have said, he uses long sentences. Why? Because he talks about a thing from several angles. It's like a person who sees Himalaya from here, he will describe it one way. Who sees from another side, fourth side, all sides will describe it in different ways, even one peak. One who sees from far, one who sees near, one who has actually climbed the Himalayas. So Sri Aurobindo is like somebody who is describing us sometimes the same vision, but from all possible angles, because that is the only way that language can conjure the infinite. There is no other way. Because you are describing the one who is all sides and everywhere and yet transcends that. Take for example, in collected poem, there is a poem called Parbrahman. So how does Sri Aurobindo describe? He says, he is, we cannot say, nor he is not. For nothing too is a conception of himself unguessed. So what is that? He is saying he is and he is not is a kind of conception we build around the divine. Only we can know him by identifying him. So this is because the moment it said it's nothingness. So we have a conception of nothingness. Oh, nothing. No thing. But nothing is not no thing. Nothing is a state that no human language, no human perception, no human conception can ever speak or describe about it. It doesn't correspond to anything that the mind can ever perceive or experience. That's why when one enters that state, one is in a state of susupti. And people, we may use the word samadhi, but it's susupti, where we have gone into a deep sleep. When we come out, we say, oh, it was so wonderful. But what did you see? What did you experience? Well, can't speak about it. We don't know. Sri Aurobindo goes into these realms where yogis with great trepidation, with great effort have had a glimpse. But he enters those realms in a waking state and brings back all these treasure houses for us. So this is the second thing we find in these books. A lot of books have been spoken about God and many will be, of course, written. But he brings those treasures which have never been seen. And I can say this having really dwelt into many of these books. Now, what is the one subject, if one has to speak about, what is that one subject? One subject that Sri Aurobindo is speaking through all these volumes. So people will name transformation, evolution. He is speaking of only God, God, God and God. It's so beautiful. How is he speaking? He is speaking about the God as the divine existence above. He is speaking about God in his cosmic manifestation. He is speaking about God in his most material form. He is speaking about God who is hidden within life. He is speaking about the entire, through evolution of consciousness, God expressing himself. Everywhere, it's nothing else but the glory of God. So sometimes I think that, there are places where Shri Krishna has halted in the Gita. Why? Because time is short. That's one reason that I really believe Gita was given on the battlefield. Shri Krishna is sometimes in a hurry. And he suddenly bypasses something which is no more necessary. Like he says, the yogins who strive to master old age, disease, death are the greatest. But that's not the issue right now. Right now. So after saying that, he inspires Arjuna to ask another question. So Arjuna goes on to that and he takes up from there. Or one place where he says that in the Vibhuti Yoga, this is my Ansha, I am this, I am this, I am this. At the end he says, you know Arjuna, countless are my manifestations. I can't speak of all of them. But obviously, he waited for his coming as Sri Aurobindo to speak of all of them. So when we look at the entire range of literature, Sri Aurobindo's literature, there is nothing which is not there. And everything seen from every angle, every little facet. Like, we have those lapse photography, lapse time photography, or time lapse photography, where you see it in small clicks all around. And that's why there is a great joy when we read these long sentences. So he would say, as I said, he is nothing and yet he is everything. So the mind, which is a seeker, see, there are two kinds of minds. One is the samurai mind and the bourgeois mind. Bourgeois mind wants everything explained like a kunji. There used to be in medical college, everywhere perhaps, students who would say, give me a kunji. Kunji, is what? Kunji is shortcut. Anatomy, they will ask this question. How many bones are there? Tuck, 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 you remember. That's called kunji. But they make useless doctors because, The other is want to understand things. So Sri Aurobindo wants us to dwell, to have the joy of it. Take the very first passage of the Life Divine. The earliest preoccupation of man in his awakened thoughts. You see the qualification. Now, he is speaking of since when is the human aspiration born? The moment man began to think and became conscious of the world around him. Or so it seems, because it returns after every period of banishment, skepticism and denial. It is something which is persistent in the race. Even when it seems to have vanished, still it returns. So all this in a one long sentence is qualifying it one after another. And then when we read the Life Divine, we'll have all these books, major works, one probably day each, so we'll touch upon them. And then he says, are the ones which continues to lead mankind. The first formula of wisdom promises to be the last. God, light, freedom, immortality. All this comes in one long passage. And it's so amazing. When you read in Savitri, there is one passage. One passage means one line, which will run into 32 lines of the one sentence, which would run into 32 lines. And one of my favorites is when he says that, he arrived at that state of self. So what is that state of self? We have heard where there is no duality, where the antagonistic ways of understanding, oppositions, they are harmonized, reconciled. And the way he describes the virtue, the grace that punishes virtue with defeat. Like that he describes. All that is suddenly understood, revealed suddenly before the eye of man. The estrus that brings things with great labor and pain. Entire passage. So then he reaches that state where he has found the self. So these long passages are required because he wants us to enjoy a vision. He's not the kind of a tourist guide who takes us, says, this, 10 minutes description. After that he says, come, let's go to the other one. No, we are children, we want to understand every small detail. And why not? So Sri Aurobindo's writing is to be enjoyed, not to be read with the mind, to be understood. Sometimes we lose that breathtaking vision when we are caught into, I want to understand this. Understanding will come as we enjoy. He will give us first a breathtaking vision, then feel every detail, every little, then he'll go to the minutiae. And then he'll go on to again connect even the smallest with the largest. This is the beauty of Sri Aurobindo's writings. And that's why the mother said, how is Sri Aurobindo to be read? So very often we categorize the writings into early writings, later writings. It has its own meaning because, Sri Aurobindo is not static. So Sri Aurobindo is not like a yogi traditionally. I have realized the self, now I'll speak. of the silence that I have realized. Sri Aurobindo went beyond the silence. And whatever he would discover, and he would say there is always something to be discovered in the infinite. And as he would keep moving toward the future, and as he would move, he would bring out new and new things. So the mother says, if you want to read Sri Aurobindo, he is best read according to subjects. So pick up a subject. For instance, if one picks up about India, so if you read from the early cultural writings, there are a lot of things about India. Then you read in the Karma Yogin, the writings during the revolutionary period entirely. Then 1914 onwards, what today is the Renaissance of India. Then later on, countless letters, several places. Then when you read them all, then there is a comprehensive vision of what India stands for. And of course, those who find it difficult, I must mention, the mother is there to help her. So if you ask her in one word, so she will say India is meant the guru of the world that summarizes everything. So she has those, one-liners which will take care of an entire, because she is the mother, she knows my children are, difficult to understand. So if there is anything complementary to Sri Aurobindo's writings, people ask for complementaries. So complementaries, they look for some of those, again, commentaries. Now, I'm not denying that they don't have a place, but my suggestion is, first, if you want to read a commentary on Sri Aurobindo's writings, not as a commentary, but as a complementary, read the mother's writings. So it's not like commentaries that there are also, like she has taken up some chapters of the life divine, some chapters from the synthesis, some chapters on the supramental manifestation, human cycle, many of the major works, the mother, and she has elaborated on some passages. But these passages are enough to give us a entry point into the deeper sense of the book. It's not necessary that the entire book should be explained, but she has revealed to us. And when we see the commentary from her vision, it changes so much. You see, you take a book like The Mother and see people have given commentaries on that. Of course, the Life Divine. Read the Mother's explanation of some of the passages from the Life Divine. There's so much, it's like a fresh breeze which washes away all the cobwebs in the mind and brings in a new light. Every passage. So this is Sri Aurobindo. He has used, yes, long sentences, but instead of laboring with the mind, they are mantric, as he says in Savitri, as when the mantra sings in yoga's ear. So the laboring mind tries to understand a meaning of words, but afterwards it falls silent in itself to know. And then a deeper knowledge awakes. So the mother has given an advice for reading Sri Aurobindo's writings: stay quiet. Stay quiet. People will say, it's so difficult, Ma. Tell us something easy. She'll say, stay quiet. If you cannot stay quiet, read Sri Aurobindo's writings, you'll become quiet. That is my addition to it. After one passage, two passages, if one is not accustomed to it, one has become quiet. And if one tries to read a little more, it is the perfect antidote to insomnia. Because it's susupti, coming from that realm, so powerful. It stretches the mind into that state. That's why you'll see Sri Aurobindo's writings when many people, because it's like meditation, more than meditation. So because meditation you put in effort, you may or may not succeed. But Sri Aurobindo's writings, he has brought to the level of the, what he called, some of the writings, early writings, he has brought to the level of the higher mind, as close as that. When people asked him, why don't you make it simpler? Of course, there are many simpler writings in letters on yoga. So Sri Aurobindo said, I have brought it so near so that you put in some effort, strain yourself. So when we try to stretch towards that, normally for a yogin, the thoughts must stretch towards infinitudes till they enter into that state of silence. But that's difficult for us. So when we start reading, it stretches from mind to higher mind. Then some of them, it takes us step by step. So entire range of writing we'll see taking us from step by step in his own way. Giant steps, but step by step. There is another very interesting thing about Sri Aurobindo's writings. At least now I'm speaking of the works in the Arya. because they were written in a journalistic style. So you will see that at the end of a chapter, he will kind of give us a summary. And at the beginning of the next chapter, he will start by summarizing what has already gone by so that we can proceed toward the future. It's an amazing way. Even if we read these two, it opens a new door because he is summarizing for us and then taking us to the next level. So this is, all these writings are mantric because if we get rid of that idea that mantra has to be in this language or that language, what really is mantra? Sri Aurobindo reveals to us. He says, even ordinarily word has power. So human speech has two levels which are revealed and two which are hidden. So why is speech important? We think just to communicate. But speech is that faculty to which the Vedic rishis gave great importance. Speech is the faculty through which we can bring down the original vibration, stir, with which creation began. So that's how the whole Nad Brahma. So Nad Brahma is, that state of the first stir. So you climb through sounds to that level where there is the first stir of creation. Now that stir is not necessarily that, we use the word Om, and it's very powerful because of various reasons that I'll probably talk about in the when we speak about the mantra. But essentially, human speech is an effort to catch that highest vibration. Sri Aurobindo is not just communicating to us the way we talk to each other. That vibration he is wanting to embody through human speech. And it can be done. It's a pity that we don't have a recording of Sri Aurobindo's speech. And perhaps for that reason, the mother graciously allowed her speech to be recorded. It's the same vibration. So that vibration is caught in a body of sound and words. What really is speech? Speech is a truth which is captured in a body of sound and words. And both are important. So as I said, he has played like a master artist with these words which just bring in that highest rhythm. So as we go higher and higher, speech assumes a very rhythmic quality. And you will see it in human life also. The sign of a truly, you want to know, cultured man, don't go by his dress. Don't go by all the outer degrees, qualifications. Just see how he speaks. Because that speech will show up. And you will see that when people become very crude, the speech begins to become vulgar more and more. But the sign of being cultured is your speech carries in it a kind of beauty, a kind of refinedness, a power, a rhythm, a truth, substance. And as we go higher and higher, the speech begins to become rhythmic. That rhythmic possibility, highest possibility of speech, Sri Aurobindo describes, is the mantra. Highest level to which speech can be uplifted. So just as they have uplifted everything to highest levels, they have uplifted speech to the very highest. And then when they manifested it in life, it is the mantra. And how is this mantra revealed? It is revealed to the seer. Because he has gone beyond the ordinary boundaries within which thought moves. How does our thought moves? That if you observe the mechanism of thought, I am not speaking of those thoughts which are 90% turned around. Oh, it was such a lovely meal, and then there is elaborate description about that meal. No, not that thought. Or about a person. People love to, spend half an hour discussing a human being. Most useless. It helps nobody, it harms only. But I'm speaking about that. If you take up anything and through thought try to understand it, there is a pure thought which can try to understand what is this world. And it will start with cognate experiences, perceptions of the world. Then you go deeper and deeper. The thought will reach a point where it'll say, I don't know, a simple thought like space. What is space? And it should be done. It's a beautiful exercise. What is time? Ever wondered what is time? Everybody speaks of what is the time? This is the time. What is time? How time came into existence? Does time move only forward? It's amazing. Is there an end of time? Is there a beginning of time? All these things are amazing. Just leave aside every book because the Shastra is within. If you raise the right questions, there's doors after doors will open. So what did the seers do? They did precisely this. There is this question, what is behind this universe? And they went deeper and deeper and deeper, like that famous Upanishad that, behind matter there is life, behind life there is mind, behind mind there is this supermind, and beyond is Ananda, the causal, and then the Ananda. So they went, and when they discovered something happened. That discovery was luminous, radiating, full of glory, full of those subtlest vibration, that powerful vibration with which creation came into existence. And that they captured in a body of sound and words. The Gita puts it very beautifully. Ascharyavat pashyati kaschidenam. Full of wonder and surprise. So many are very happy with that. They come and tell you the way you can also have the wonder. But Sri Aurobindo is among those who would say, imperfect is the joy not shared with all. And the instrument. Look at Sri Aurobindo's instrument. I mean, his studies with his mastery of languages, English, Latin, Greek, French, right before he has come back to India. There he learns Bengali and Sanskrit. And then eventually, 32 languages, Tamil. He has written some of these, translated some of the Tamil poems. Not too many, but there are. So, with somebody like that, with such an instrument, such a breathtaking vision, such a tremendous lofty aspiration, which has pierced through all the secrets. When we read Savitri Book 1, Canto 5, he wants to go beyond than just that is the void. And then he says, in the void he saw throned the omniscient supreme. And he had that courage, that aspiration, the will not to be satisfied with half things. So, as he says in Savitri, that you reach that point where world and God become true and one. So he reached that point, the secret ukase. And then he says the riddle grew plain and sure. The riddle of the world, life, it was all revealed. And that he brings into speech. So this is his gift of grace to the world. In terms of pure outer information, which is the least interesting part. Right now you have 36 volumes. Probably another 1 or 2 volumes will come, which is mainly index and glossary. There would be other volumes which are on letters, notes which have been lost, unfortunately, or which has not been given. But these are the main volumes. And one can start from, I personally believe that when you read everything available. Why stop with half-hearted? It's such a joy. And also why? Because, see, some people immediately plunge into the life divine. So my own take on is it that if you ever hear a musician, master musician, and you see a concert, if you suddenly enter when, the high notes are being produced through the instrument, you will feel lost. But when you start from little by little, it's like mood, atmosphere, then you get into a little bit of sync with what he's trying to say. So it's always good to start with this. Maybe letters on yoga if one wants to enter into the yoga, or early cultural writings. If that's too much, then, Karma Yogin, these are very nice essays divine and human, essays in philosophy and yoga. Some of these books like The Yoga and Its Objects. So when we read them, we get into a mood and atmosphere. Like Yoga and Its Objects, he describes later on what comes in synthesis as the 4 eights. So 4 eights, he speaks of that in Yoga and Its Object, that according to Sanat Sujata, there are these 4 aspects, 4 eights which are helpful to a seeker. So when we have read that and we turn to this, here there is a great elaboration. So when we have tuned in, this is called tuning in. First we have to plug in. Plug in means read every day a little. It's not easy to plug in because all our, when you go to America, your plug-in systems are useless. For that matter, many countries, and vice versa also. So you have to have an adapter. So we don't know how to plug in. Why? Because we are all the time talking about things which have nothing to do with those. Suddenly we get in hand Life Divine. And then we are not able to plug in because the sockets are not there. We don't even know where the socket is. We are so used to plugging into food and human beings and daily news feed news feed, no? What is that? So we can't plug in. So sometimes things like, a little bit of some work of somebody's written a little commentary, a talk here and there, they help us to just plug in. That's all. But go as soon as possible to the original. That is the whole purpose even of these talks. It's not that, one keeps hearing the talks all one's life. Read Sri Aurobindo's works in the original, the mother's works. So, plug in. Initially, you will find it difficult. Doesn't matter. Read a little. Mother says, read a passage every day. Keep the mind quiet. Do not try to understand. It's understood. We won't understand. 1000 volt ka jhatka. We don't even have the senses to perceive it. Suddenly, Sri Aurobindo says something and it's like, what has he said? Or sometimes even one-liners. All problems of existence are essentially problems of harmony. Now, when we are not used to understanding what harmony, the person gets up and says, see, that is the problem, pointing to his wife. You're the problem, creating disharmony in my life. So we have reduced a very high truth to, of course, everything is problem of harmony. But when you look at it in the highest sense, it is the harmony between each element of creation with the Creator. And all other elements within us. And that includes us, pinned, the Brahman which is inside the pin. So the same passages will reveal new meanings. So read again and again. It's not a textbook where we have to just pass an exam and, okay, we are done with it. So one can read again and again and again and again. The whole life is there. I remember Jugal Kishore Mukherjee, who was the registrar in knowledge he was the registrar, yes. So once he was telling me, he took, I think he was in his 80s, and then he said, no, I just want to now have 2 years with myself, 2 years. So I asked him, he was very fond, like very beautiful relation. So I told him, Jugalda, what do you want to do now? Now he had read Sri Aurobindo so thoroughly that when he would take a class, so supposing he would say a passage from the Life Divine, okay? So he'll pick up a sentence. He'll say cross references. He won't refer anything. This you will find it there in this work of Sri Aurobindo on this page written like this. And then he will cross refer to another place. That kind of brilliance. So I asked him, what do you want to do? He says, I want to now read Sri Aurobindo. I said, what is it? I said, how many times you have read? He said, I have read 22 times. Why you want to read now? Oh, I just want to now enjoy. 2 years, and I would see him with that big glasses, thick glasses, put like this and read Sri Aurobindo. And I met him a couple of times. He would be, during that phase, he was so happy because he's reading Sri Aurobindo. He doesn't need to read, he remembers much of it. And exactly after 2 years, one day sitting on the table, he just put his head on the table and left his body. What a glorious way to depart. Yogic departure. With Sri Aurobindo. And these are words which are luminous. They are not just words of vehicles. When we look into what Sri Aurobindo and the mother have said, words are just vehicles. That's why, you see, they are like capsules which can be devastating. There are empires which have been lost because a word has been spoken at a point of time. And it has destroyed a whole empire. Chanakya's story. One word. It acted like a vehicle. And he kept it inside that tomorrow I am going to return it back. So these words we use so casually. Sri Aurobindo says word is power. Mother goes on to say that there are different categories of words. One type is which carry a power because they have been used through centuries and millenniums. And she categorizes Om under that category. Because for millennium people have used in India. So the moment you use the word, it evokes a beautiful feeling. So, and she says ki they are words which immediately put you in contact with the highest consciousness possible because the word has been used to communicate that aspect. Leaving aside the vibratory rhythm and all that. Then there are words which have been uttered by people who have realized a certain state and the word is a means to communicate that state. Like a mantra. That will again have a separate thing on mantra. And then There are words which, over a period of time, there are words which can be charged by a person. And there she gives beautiful example. She says, when it is said, may peace be with you. She gives this example. She says, you actually can create and surround the person with this atmosphere. Now, why this is important apart from its utility in everyday life? When you read Sri Aurobindo's letters on yoga, somebody is very depressed, doesn't know what to do, and read Sri Aurobindo's letters on yoga, and you read a sentence like, remember that the mother loves you. Base your life on this one single fact, and all will be fine. Just imagine. Now, anybody can say, call the mother, call the mother. But when Sri Aurobindo says, in all difficulties, call the mother, it's charged with that intense luminous vibration. It carries a much deeper force than when, people keep on saying this because, they have to say something and they don't know. Of course, calling the mother in any case is so wonderful. But when Sri Aurobindo says it's charged with that ultimate power, many such things, that what we have to always remember, be faithful to the light and the call, refuse to be depressed. When somebody says that, is it sure that I'll realize the divine? He says, it is much more certain than 2 plus 2 equals to 4. What do you say to that? He says, one who has turned to the divine and sought him is destined to realize it today or tomorrow, but it can be intensified. You can shorten, you can make it. Look at that famous thing. The spiritual destiny always stands. It may be delayed, but it cannot be cancelled. Just imagine these wonderful, powerful, these are simple letters on yoga. It's not that, people have this idea that if I don't read the Life Divine, I have not made an entry into Sri Aurobindo. There's so many people. Of course, one should read. It's such a wonderful book. But it's not that reading all these books are mandatory. It's not like a compulsory vaccination. But it is the ultimate vaccine that you can ever find for all the virus that is floating around in the world. The perfect antidote, the sure cure of ignorance, of pain, of suffering, of misery, which we live in. And it's a pity that he wrote and wrote and wrote for us, and we do a namaste, keep them on the shelf, and let it adorn somewhere in our room. So let me close. It's a subject which will be taking over a period of time. So today we'll close with this poem of Sri Aurobindo, Seer, Deep-Hearted. So this is a poem which is the perfect, I take it like an autobiographical poem. We'll probably read it again and then we will go into its length in detail. But today we just want to read it because he has brought this for us which is durlabh even for the gods. You know what the gods miss out there? They miss the Gita. They miss Savitri. They miss the writings of Sri Aurobindo. So that's why they sometimes want to take a human body to experience what they cannot experience. So we'll just read Seer, Deep. Because there is a dash in between deep-hearted. So this poem, as I said, it's autobiographical and we'll read it in detail later on. Today we'll just read it at the close of this first session of a series of talks on Sri Aurobindo's writings. Because they are infinite. And no way that even a few talks can really bring out all these details. Seer, deep-hearted. Seer, deep-hearted, divine king of the secrecies. He is not just gone into the secrecies, he is the king, divine king of the secrecies. There is a difference. Somebody who has entered and seen a secret is one thing. He is the king of those secrets, the master. Occult fountain of love sprung from the heart of God. These writings are an act of love. Very often I say they are Sri Aurobindo's letters to us. He's telling us what your destiny is. We go to all kinds of Totawala and I don't know, Daruwala to ask, what is our destiny, sir? Please tell me what will happen to me. You go to Sri Aurobindo, he says your destinies will become divine. That is destiny. Destiny is not what will happen to me after 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. Destiny is what I am destined to become. So why is he telling us all this? So that we have the patience, the faith, the perseverance to move on. Because that is the truth he has seen. It's an act of love. We know that Sri Aurobindo wrote these works sometimes at night, from night 9 till morning 6. Very often directly on the typewriter. And at one place he laments that if for nothing else, he says, I have strange disciples, that while in every ashram people are busy telling their master is God, but my disciples are busy disproving. He says, and he tells it so semi-humorously, but it's a fact. They are busy doubting to find something. And then he says, if for nothing else, but the fact that I wrote the entire Arya single-handedly, burning the midnight kerosene from night till morning. He's writing. He says, if for nothing else, isn't it enough to qualify me at least? And while carrying on with all his other activities, which included 8 hours walk, his work on the world events, all this he was continuing to do when he was writing. So what is it but an act of love? He literally, I would say, almost lost his sight to give us a new sight. And we are not ready even to spend a little time, just one passage, not much. Occult fountain of love sprung from the heart of God. Ways thou knewest, no feet ever in time had trod. You know ways. Nobody had gone there he had gone. No one had ever glimpsed those mysteries. Those mysteries he has seen. Nobody ever has said that man will go beyond man. Among all the seers I am speaking of, people have imagined, conceived the coming of Superman in whatever, sometimes very often in crude ways, sometimes in a logical way. But here is, generally we hear, Nartan Paya Bas. Human flesh, that's the end of the journey. Now merge into Nirvana. And Sri Aurobindo says, no, it's the beginning of the real journey, new journey. The game begins now. Until now it was all unconscious. Now begins the real journey. Sri Aurobindo says that. So why he could say this? Ways thou knewest, no feet ever in time had trod. Words leaped, flashing. The flame-billows of wisdom seas. So there is the sea of wisdom. What is known in India as Seer Sagar. Seer Sagar is the sea of superconscient light, over which time is floating, carrying earth upward, and its heart is the Mahavishnu, the eye extended in heaven. The Lord himself is asleep in the waters. So milk, wisdom sees, and in that flame billows, fire is emerging. Out of that sea of superconscient light, fire is emerging, and the seer is releasing it into the world. Words leaped, flashing. It is that fire, that superconscient, as he describes in Savitri, the message of the superconscient fire, the lyric of love that waits through time. Vast, thy soul was a tide washing the coasts of heaven. So here is a seer whose soul carried within it a surge that went all the way to heaven and took away from there all the jewels. Vast in thy soul was a tide. Here the word in is missing. Now I don't want to get into it. Why in should be there or not there. Either which way. It's understood. Vast in thy soul was a tide washing the coasts of heaven. So you know what is there in the coasts of heaven? All the jewels, all the nice things. He's bringing them. Washing them like, on the seashore we have, the sea gives those gifts. thoughts broke, burning and bare, crossing the human night. In the realm of ignorance in which we live, though we are very wise people, right? Because we have done BA, MA, MBBS, MD, and thereby put more and more stamp upon our ignorance. Sealed it with arrogance. Ignorance is not bad because everybody is in it, but ignorance becomes dangerous when you put a seal of arrogance on it. This is truth. So here, these thoughts break into the human night. See, the word break is so significant. It's like an army suddenly marching into the citadel of night. So he's using a word, thoughts broke, like a shaft of light suddenly surrounds. Thoughts broke, burning and bare, crossing the human night. White star scripts of the gods born from the book of light. So, they are star scripts of God. That which the gods speak among themselves, Sri Aurobindo has brought it to us. That reminds me of that little joke of Amrita when somebody told him, Sanskrit is the Deva Bhasha. So Amrita was Tamil by birth and wonderful sense of humor. Not because of attachment to something. So he says, yeah, that is half the truth. What do you mean? It is Deva Bhasha means when gods speak to us, they speak in Sanskrit. But when they speak among themselves, they speak in Tamil. So you can't understand. It is a way of saying, how do God speak? Sri Aurobindo in Chandanagar, he would look at, gaze at the space in front. And someone asked him, Motilal Roy, what are you gazing? He said, the gods, the gods. All these gods, goddesses, the powers of the supermind, Ila, Mahi, Saraswati, they would come to him. He says, what about the gods? He says, they are communicating to me, speaking to me. What are they speaking? He says, that is what I am trying to understand. So this is white star scripts of the gods, privy to the gods, born from the book of light. Actually, in the previous volume, I find that word so wonderful, but it's okay. Here it is book of light. In the previous one, it is born from the presses of light. So like soma is born, no? You press the plant and soma is born. So there the word is presses of light. So when light presses, squeeze it, it becomes laser. But that's okay. Again, it's just in case some people refer to the old book, they'll find this little word different. I love that word, presses of light. It creates a kind of sense of power all through the poem. Book of light is relatively little milder. So we can take a difference, like presses of light is from the book of light. You distill and concentrate, and that is given to us. So white star scripts of the gods born from the book of light, page by page, to the dim children of earth were given. Page by page, nothing is left out. And the irony is, we say, oh, it's too much to read. The entire history of earth, civilization, creation, the entire understanding of our present moment of man, and the entire destiny of man as he'll move forward. Of course, you can conjure it all in one word. That word, of course, is simply, it depends on how one looks at it. To me, it is Ma. Conjured everything because she is the origin, she is the path, and she is the goal. But all this is the revelation of that Creator as He has entered into creation and He is revealing Himself. So we can use the word God if you want to put it. And this entire revelation is there through countless volumes. And even this is nothing. When Sri Aurobindo was asked, Sir, you have written so much. No. I have written only 10% of the knowledge that exists. Only 10%. When will you write the rest? Why don't you write the rest? Let mankind be ready for this much. If we could read even 1% of that 10%, life would be wonderful. Namaste.